Okay, welcome everybody. We'll reconvene the meeting at 5:03. The board met in closed session, and we discussed and conducted the superintendent's evaluation. It all went well. I, as board president, will summarize, and we will put that evaluation in its personnel file. We will also reconvene back into closed session after the meeting. Could you lead us in our pledge, Diana?
Ready to salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You're okay, Brent.
It's not cold in here as it was in the boardroom. Jennifer just said you like it cold, Stan. It was really cold in the Where's Eric? Okay, we are pleased to announce that we will start out the meeting with our oath of office to our student trustee. Welcome, Diana. It's nice to have that seat filled again, and Stan's going to administer your oath.
Come on over, Diana, and take your place here. I think you probably should stand right there. You should raise your right hand. And you can repeat after me. I'm going to issue you your, not this part. I'm going to issue you your official oath of office. And when we get done, that means you will officially have been sworn in. And then we're going to give you a moment here at the podium to come around to this side so that you can face the board and say anything that you'd like to them about being the new student board member. And then you can go back and take your seat and we'll pick up our regular meeting from there. All right, so you're going to first say I and then state your name.
Okay. I, Diana Garcia,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I swear I will bear truth and allegiance
that I swear that I will bear truth and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will
and that I will
well and faithfully
well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Okay, congratulations. You are officially a member of the college.
Well, I guess I should look into what I just signed up for, huh?
Especially the part about no mental reservation.
Yeah, and I have to support the Constitution like a little warrior. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm really excited this year to be student trustee. I kind of took a risk this year doing it because I was like, I don't know if I'll be able to have time for it, but I really wanted to get more involved. So I was like, okay, I'll do student trustee, and I'm really excited because I know I'll do my job as well as I can. And I hope to get to know you guys really well because I do want to have like a cheat sheet, I guess, for our class so they can know you as well as I do in some form. And hopefully whatever you guys need for me to do, I'll try to do it the best I can. If it's informing students about something, I hope you guys feel I'm responsible enough to do it, and I'll try as hard as I can. I'm really excited though for this semester and next semester and being a part of the board, I guess. So thank you guys so much.
Hey, can you tell us the high school that you represent us from?
I represent Hampton West High School.
Very
Yes.
good. Okay, thank
You see
you.
that smile over there? You're sitting right next Well, and Diana, as board members, we ask for you to speak the students' perspective on policy issues, and you'll, when you get your agenda ahead of time, you'll be able to to discern which items concern students, and we ask that you speak up on behalf of the student body.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on, we are going to public comment for board policy 2350. Any person may address the board at this time, either on an agenda item or other matters of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. A maximum of 5 minutes is allowed for each speaker, with a maximum time of 15 minutes per item unless otherwise extended by the board. Do we have any public comments concerning items on the agenda?
I have you.
Okay.
I'd like to ask that on the consent calendar, item 7, be pulled and considered separately, please. Specifically, 205 and 206, and also item 11. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other public comments concerning items on the agenda? Public comments concerning items not on the agenda? Thank you. We will move on to board and executive staff reports. First, we'll have our student trustee report.
Okay, so currently in Student Senate, we already completed our elections. So we did it online in order to read for all 3 campuses. It was a little bit difficult to get a lot of people to vote. We did have a low voting for the amount of students that we have. So hopefully, once students are used to all the changes that we made, we'll see a better like outcome. We also have our new board, so we had our first meeting. We're all really focused on accreditation this year. We have Stan coming in and presenting every week, telling us, informing us what's going on, what we need to know, and how to be a vessel of like representing it to our students. We're also encouraging in class for students to participate in the forums that we're having, and we're offering extra credit and like incentive for them to go. We have established our senators for this year, as well as our committee members, so they should be attending the meeting soon. We're trying to get like a participatory, there was a nice word that she used, is participatory student government. And let's see, our class has already done a lot of events. We did, what was the first day? Student Services Affairs, so we told students of what ASB or Student Senate could offer for them. We also did Transfer Day, which we did at the convention center. So we informed students in the community what's going on with their school, what Student Senate can offer. Constitution Day will be tomorrow, and Club Rush, Club Social is next week, so we're doing that, and the Multicultural Affair as well will be next week, so we're getting ready, doing our meetings and everything for that. And, oh yes, and our name is now Student Senate, it's not ASB.
Well, that was a lot. It sounds like you're going to be very busy in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Good
Yeah.
luck with all of that, Diana. Thank you. Any board member reports? Not going to report on your trip, John? John's been gone for 2 months. He had a great trip.
I was
just in
gone
case.
for 2 months. My wife and I took something I've never done in my life, was 2 months off. Spent the 2 months in Canada, Alaska, and I must admit I didn't miss a single one of them.
Likewise.
I'm waiting. I knew that would come from somebody, but it wasn't going to come from me.
I've been planning on doing this for about 50 years in 1 month, and I was getting a little bit cold feet about it in 1 month. We said, well, John, if you wait another 50 years, you might have trouble making the trip.
Well, welcome back. Our foundation report, Mr. Foster.
Good evening. So the vast majority of the scholarship awards were distributed. The foundation policy is that we wait until August 25th, which is the last day for class scheduling. And so with the help of a temporary employee, we've had a COS retiree, Elaine Ford, help us out as we were down a position. And within 7 business days, we had 80 of the scholarships payments out, and within 11 days, we had another 70. So we're feeling really good about that. We have a lot of good stories of perseverance and self-improvement amongst all those students, and we're working on ways to capture those stories and be able to project those out into the community and through our publications so that we can spur more support for more scholarships. We are also doing some tracking, some better tracking of the amount of applications that are occurring so that we can start isolating how much demand for scholarships we have. So we can show the gap between the demand for and need for scholarships and the amount that we're currently supplying. We had a foundation specialist start today. She's a 24-hour-a-week employee. Her name is Annalisa Martinez, and she has been working for COS. She worked temporarily in the bookstore, and she was also an intern for the business internship program. So she knows her way around campus and knows the student body. It's been a great start for her. On September 24th, we have an executive committee meeting, and the executive committee is going to be considering a proposal for a new investment advisor firm. We have the proposal in place now, so they can take action on that. We'll also be reviewing a spending plan recommendation for the 2013-2014 school year. We're going to be firming up a date for the next Hall of Fame for sometime in the next calendar year. And we also have setting a policy for how much of the scholarship and foundation asset earnings are we going to be using for subsequent years. So we have a 2013 decision to make, and then a subsequent 2014 and on decision to make. On October 1st through the 4th, I'll be representing the district at a conference of college advancement in San Diego, community college advancement. And I'm hoping to get some insight on foundation best practices, donor management software, which we have none right now, donor prospect research companies, and building an alumni association. So those are all things that are being asked of the foundation by the foundation board. And so getting connected with my colleagues across the state is really important to the foundation, I think. And so looking forward to going to that conference. And we also have, in addition to the COS pins that you received earlier today, we have some COS Foundation pins as well foundation. So that concludes my report. If you have any questions of me, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions, board members? Thank you very much.
I just let you know, Kim, I will not be there on the 24th. I'll be out of state.
Okay, very good, thank you. I'll check in with you before the meeting just to get answers.
Okay, Dr. Lucerno will now give our presentation.
The first document that you have in your board packet is the College of Sequoia's 2013 Resource Allocation Manual. Sorry. And this is the series. You've had two other manuals that have come before you. The first one was it's the Integrated Planning Manual. Then you have the Governance and Decision Making Manual. And this is the third in the hot series, the Resource Allocation Manual. And basically what this goes through, how we develop our budget, and then how we approve resources at the above base budget level. So two of the things I want to point out for you are on page 10. There's a timeline and process for base budget development. So one of the things this does that moves along similarly to the other two manuals is it talks about the timeline and when we are supposed to do each step in a process. So that is in January, we begin with the review of the governor's budget. The District Governance Senate will review the district goals in the master plan and the objectives in the strategic plan. And then the administrators draft budget assumptions. February through May, the Budget Committee reviews and revises the budget assumptions and updates the District Governance Senate on the status of the budget assumptions. And then the Fiscal Services builds a tentative budget. And the Vice President of Administrative Services schedules annual meetings at each of the campuses. For June, starting in 14 and the new year after, we present the tentative budget to the Board of Trustees for approval. July through August, we review and adjust the proposed budget assumptions in the tentative budget as needed. And in September, we present the final budget to the Board of Trustees, and that's when the board approves the budget. So this is a process we've been following generally, and so this actually codifies that this is the process, this is the timeline for when that budget is, how that process works. The next few steps talk about our above base resource allocation process. And I want to just move forward to page 14 as it summarizes the whole process in the chart there. This part I need my glasses for because it's very small. And Megan's putting that up on the screen there. This is just adjusted to what our traditional procedures have been, but it puts a timeline on the side and talks about how we approve above base budget resource allocations. And so in step 1A and 1B, either departments or divisions or units, they evaluate their existing budgets and request above base resources through program review. This happens in October. And then also that can happen through the strategic plan. So if someone is carrying out a request for the strategic plan in 1B, they can also request funding. In step 2, the divisions review the funding requests, and if they're able to fund it within their own division budget, they do that at that time, and if not, they move it forward to the appropriate administrator. In step 3, this happens in November, but by the end of November, those resource requests are prioritized within the service areas. So for an academic, they're prioritized by instructional council, student services by student services council, administration by administrative services, and then those that report directly to the president by the president's office. In step 4, the budget committee reviews or asks for the technical request to get approval or support by the technology committee, as well as the facilities committees for facility committee, like are they feasible, is it workable, and are the costs right? In step 5, by February, the budget committee uses a rubric, and that's on the next page, on page 15. They use the rubric to prioritize all of the requests. So they've received the prioritized requests from the 4 different groups, and now they prioritize the entire list and send that to the District Governance Senate. And then by March 15th, the District Governance Senate in step 6 reviews the prioritized lists and makes recommendations to the Superintendent President. And step 7, the Superintendent President prepares the final recommendations and presents the final report to the Board of Trustees. So I pointed out the next page is the rubric for the ranking that the Budget Committee will use. And those are the main parts of the document that I wanted to point out.
For
Questions?
just information purposes, how many different budgets are there in this step 1A and B? Do those come through all in 1 year?
Let's see, let me get back to that page. It really depends because right now, every department and every division has a budget. So every division across campus, and as well as the vice presidents and the different departments have a budget. So if they're able to find the money within their existing budget, they'll do that. And that happens a lot of times that, I'll give you an example. In my experience in fine arts, that we needed a piano tune, and that cost about $1,000. Well, we're able to work within the department and move something maybe from the art department into the music department on a one-time basis to find the $1,000 to tune the piano. In that case, that doesn't have to come forward because we're able to figure it out within our specific division budget.
Division and on to sometimes spreading into the department.
Yeah, and then from there it will go to the dean, and the deans also have a small budget that they can use and say, hey, let's just take that out of my budget before we forward it for the further. So there's several steps that we would look at of internal funding before we took it to the next
But what
level.
you're saying is there are a lot of budgets.
There are a lot of budgets. I'm sure Leanne here can give us the exact, or Linda can give us the exact number, but they're
A
shaking
lot.
their heads.
Yeah,
that
when
no.
Angela and Linda are shaking their heads,
That's too many to
I asked
count.
the wrong question. Okay, that's all now. Any questions, board members? Okay, so
Okay,
let's move on.
and this has been approved for the District Governance Senate and the Academic Senate, and it's here for information for you guys. The second handout you have is our 2-minute offense. I won't say who made up that name, but you can tell it was someone who used to coach football and all of that. So this is an overview of the different things that we have going on in these last few weeks as we get the report finalized and ready. The first thing that we did in our 2-minute offense was put together a show cause report final editing team. And as you can see, I'm co-chairing that with Dr. Trimble, and then Dr. Hollabaugh, Christian Anderson, Matt Beret, and Dr. Ozturk are also serving on that committee. And they have been working night and day, weekends, we were here Sunday, and nonstop work on this report and making sure that it's in the best possible shape that it can be as we move forward. The district-wide accreditation forums, we've already had the first 3, and there's 4 main points to the forums, which are getting the word out as to where we are moving with our action plans for the report. So each group that's presenting is talking about restating the ACCJC recommendations, so where we were, clearly stating our response, where we desire to be, and then presenting our planned actions, what we're going to do for the future. And then we have open discussion and feedback. And we hadn't been getting much feedback in like a large district and, you know, big room environment in Ponderosa. And so we actually could put together a survey that's going out, and so people can respond privately via the survey and give us feedback on the various action plans. So we've had a pretty decent turnout live. 50 to 80 people, and then the attempt to have it back by the 14th, and then we mail it on the 15th. So that's the process where we are right now with the timing of the report. And there was one other thing I was going to say, but I see Sam wanted to say something.
I'm just going to, because I know our brains are all colliding a little bit right now with a lot of information. I'll clarify a couple of details in the points that Jennifer made. We're sending the final edited draft of the show cause report to the printer on October the 7th.
So,
They need 4 days they actually need 5 days to print the roughly 50 copies that we need. So they're going to make the first 20 copies available to us within about 72 hours. So we'll be actually FedExing our final report up to the ACCJC on probably Thursday or probably late Thursday, the 10th of October, giving it plenty of time to get there. You as board members will see that draft, that copy, as soon as it goes out to Senate and District Governance Senate, which is next week. So you'll have over a week to read it. And remember when Dr. Bino was here, what she reminded us is when that show cause report comes to the board for your final ratification, it's at that point not for us to change or revise, but it's to verify to the public that that report has been presented publicly to the board and is available to the public then through the board, and we post it on our website. So you'll see it on the 15th for your final ratification, but you will have had a week ahead of time to actually read the draft of the report that's going to the printer at the same time it goes to print.
Thank you, Jennifer. I know this is a lot of work, and to everybody that's working on it, I mean, I guess not to put any more pressure on you, but when you consider the fact that, you know, this institution staying open and providing education to over 10,000 students kind of hinges on this report, it makes you realize the value of it. So your time is appreciated. And as board members, we know we're not in there writing it with you, but we're pulling for you, and we know that it's going to meet all the requirements. Thanks, Jennifer. Okay, Stan, lighten the conversation.
Of course, we would love to take the opportunity tonight, like we did at our last board meeting, to introduce some new staff who are a part of the College of the Sequoias management team this year. And if you don't mind, I'm going to remove myself from this spot and move over to the podium so that we can call up our individuals one at a time. I'd like to have them all come forward if they're here as we introduce them, and allow you to recognize them with a warm welcome and a round of applause once they've all been introduced. And then if any of them would like to make any comments, we told them they have a brief moment to be able to do that. So let me come over here. And I think most of these folks you may have met at one time or another, but if not, we would like to point out to you tonight some folks who are now in new positions with us for College of the Sequoias. First, I'd like to invite up our new Vice President of Administrative Services, Ms. Christine Statton. I'd like to invite our Director of Research Planning and Institutional Effectiveness, Dr. Mehmet Ozturk, but he goes by Dolly. Our Director of Foundation for College of the Sequoias, Tim Foster. Our Associate Dean of Athletics and Physical Education, Mr. Brent Davis. Our Dean of Student Services, Stephanie Collier. Dean of Student Services, Jessica Figalo, who's out at conference. Our Director of Financial Aid, Ms. Diana Faber. We have an interim director for the Disability Resource Center, Mr. Don Mast. You all know Don. He's a retiree back helping us part-time while we have that position still vacant. And then I'd like to also invite up Mary Catherine Oxford, our Director of the Learning Resource Center. This represents the team of administrators that we were able to replace this year through either retirements, resignations, or attrition. And we would ask that you join us in welcoming them to the management team for College of the Sequoias. And now briefly, if any of you would like to come by and say anything on your way back to your seats, you're welcome to do so. Christine, want to go first?
Well, I just want to thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and be working here. I've been here a little over a month, and I sure have enjoyed it. I'm very excited to be here. I've kind of had a smile on my face. I feel like I've really enjoyed the people I've worked with and the challenges and the issues we're dealing with. Just keep us busy, but it's good work, it's hard work, and I'm learning a lot really fast. So very glad to be here. Thank you.
I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
Very brief.
I feel I've had plenty of podium time so far, so thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'll be hitting you folks up for money as well.
We're waiting and ready.
I just wanted to say hello, and I've already met with everybody here individually and already seen a lot of you at our athletic events, so just thank you, and really feel like I'm amongst friends here.
Hey Brett, I noticed that, I can't let you go without.
All right.
I noticed that the football team is 2-0.
We are 2-0.
And they have beaten, I think, if I'm not wrong, 2 teams from Fresno County.
Yeah, we've
West
been,
Hills and
West
and
Hills
Reedley.
and both
Reedley.
technically.
Be
Yeah.
specific, please.
Okay, so what that means is there's only 1 team left in Fresno County that will play. And so if you beat them, that'll be a great season.
Okay, we will go for the trifecta.
They only scored 76 points this week. So
I saw that, yeah.
We know you have some mistakes.
I can't help it. I'm just really excited to make the move over from academics, which I love, and I'm really sad to leave all my folks in the fine arts and language arts, and then my new folks in the LRC, who I only got to spend a little bit of time with. But I'm really excited about the challenges of student services. It's a great team over there, and then Jessica and I are just really excited to be working with Brent, and it's just a new challenge and a new day, and so hopefully it'll be good. I know it will be good, sorry. It's been a long day, that's
Hi, I'm very excited to be here. I've had the opportunity to be born and raised here, and I worked for Tulare County, well actually Tulare City for a while. So I've been in the county working. It's always been my goal to maximize the impact that I can bring to the community, and being in the LRC and COS at this time I think is the biggest opportunity that I have in my professional career, so I'm excited to serve and excited to be part of COS.
I just wanted to say thank you. I know I'm an old face with a hat. Not a really old face. But I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, well, welcome all of you, and yeah, lots of familiar faces and some new ones. We know we have challenges, but I think all of you sound motivated and ready to take them on. Our Academic Senate report.
Good evening. The Academic Senate is beginning its work this year. We have currently 2 standing committees, and one of them will be looking at revising our bylaws and constitutions to bring them into alignment with the new governance and decision-making manual. The other one will be looking into formalizing a process for appointing faculty to committees. That has been done just kind of ad hoc, and now we want to have a formal process again to bring it into alignment. We're also looking forward to the numerous APs and VPs that are going to be coming forward again to try and bring everything into alignment with the 3 new manuals. That's going to be quite a bit of work for everybody, and they will eventually make it to you once they get through District Government Center and Academic Center. So a lot to do, and we're looking forward to it.
Thank you. Costa report. Ms. Greer.
Ed's gonna help hand some stuff out for me, for all of you. I'm gonna refer to what he's handing out in just a minute, but Ed, thank you for being Vanna.
Well, I don't know.
Pardon my back.
Your skirt's
Pardon
not
my
short
front,
enough,
too.
I want to start with a grievance update. Costa continues to have 7 outstanding grievances with the district. Sadly, I've been advised that it's become necessary to seek legal action to compel the district to follow the process and participate in doing strike-off on 2 of the grievances. The district has advised Costa that the way to gain resolution to differences is by using the grievance process, but is refusing to participate in those 2 instances. Financial resources used by the district for legal services are also of great concern. If tonight's consent items are approved, for the 9 months of this year, the district will have paid $169,658. That's a lot of money. To the firm of Atkinson, Adelson, Loya, and Romo. Much of the work done by this firm has been in response to grievances. As I mentioned last month, grievances consume not only time and energy, but financial resources that could be more effectively utilized to directly benefit students. It now appears that the district is hiring a second law firm to replace the services previously provided by Tulare County Council. I'm wondering, will there be additional costs involved in utilizing this firm's services? Is there approximation of those costs? And are financial resources strained for non-legal expenses? Only for non-legal expenses. Costa continues to advocate that the best way to resolve differences is by working together to find solutions. Campus climate is not improved by the district's reliance on third parties to solve our problems. I want to now direct your attention to what I handed out. That's actually a copy of a request by a bipartisan pair of senators, state senators, who have requested a state audit of the practices of the ACCJC, specifically related to schools that have received sanctions. And sadly, we know we're one of them. The senators have concerns that California colleges have disproportionately been sanctioned, violation or circumvention of employee contracts, along with imposing numerous college policy changes that have not been reviewed or approved by state legislature have been identified. They are looking for evidence that in order to comply with the compulsory ACCJC directives, colleges have redirected limited resources to fund new administrative functions and positions, thus impacting our overall campus climate. The audit will include schools evaluated, in my understanding, between 2009 and 2013. And as the association president, I have been invited to give feedback on my impression of that process and its impact here at COS. There is, last item that I'd like to bring up tonight, there is a bill, AB 955, that is currently on the governor's desk. You might remember that this is the bill that would allow community college districts to offer classes at full tuition, which is $295 a unit or more in some cases, during summer or winter sessions, so that students with funds would be able to make sure they get their classes. Faculty associations, the Chancellor's Office, and the CTA all oppose this idea on the grounds that it will give districts an incentive to convert as many classes as possible to a high fee basis in order to raise revenue. And it could act to shut students of limited means out of access to those classes. The only way to prevent its enactment is if the governor vetoes it. Have you given any thoughts of taking a position to ensure that none of our students will be shortchanged with this possible passage of this? I would remind you that there is a 2-week response period on this matter and that you would communicate directly with the governor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, our CSEA president's report. Mr. Lamar. We missed you.
I miss me too. Except I'm used to having Diana standing beside me. She's not. Yeah, she's gonna sit and keep me. First, I would like to thank Stan and John as the district negotiators. We have made, I think, positive steps forward on negotiations. We're still in negotiations, and I know we're still under discussions, and I do appreciate that. It's not easy. I know Stan at the last meeting had mentioned there's a lot of redundancy coming up, but a lot of it has to do, the past is what has brought us to where we are. And a lot of the membership sometimes feels like the past is just shoved behind us as, oh, well, move on. But that has affected a lot of people. And so they would like to know that going forward that we're not going to go back to the past and start doing some of the things that happened before. Neither John or Stan have done anything to do that. But it sounds like, I've heard this 100 times. It's like, but people have to get it off their chests. So I think we're moving forward there. Interesting, at the last 2 CSE meetings, we've been talking a lot about workload and the lack of staffing here at COS, and we all know why and what's been going on the last 5 years. But then I opened up this attachment to annual staffing report from John. I just about fell out of my chair. I didn't know we were this far behind the 8 ball. When I came here back in the mid-'80s, we had about 4,000 students, and there was about somewhere between 185 and 190 CSEA employees, bargaining unit employees. According to this report now, as I've gone through it and subtracted out the confidential and management employees of CSEA, it now stands at 158. And I thought, holy mackerel, we've lost so many people, and there's a lot of services we're not able to offer now because of that. I then began to look through the report, and the certificate, the full-time is at 154, and I know they used to be up in the 170s. The adjunct is down to 315, and I know they were in the 400 or 500s before. And interesting though, the management administration, which was in the mid-20s when I came here, and Scroggins brought it up to about 35, it now stands at 35. So the only big gain on this report is administration. And not that that's wrong or right, it's just now that I've seen this study and see that CSEA, the bargaining unit, has fallen so far, I think this deserves a lot of study on all our parts to figure out where we're going, because 4,000 students, and we had a good staffing at that time, back in the mid-'80s, we now have 3 campuses. We're way far down, so I think it's something we all need to look at together and figure out where we're going. Yes, we have improved efficiency. Yes, technology has helped us out. But then again, I can guarantee you there's a lot of services we're not offering that we used to. I mean, good services, like custodians able to dump trash daily. That hasn't happened in a number of years. And so everybody's pitching in. But at some point, I don't want to see the camel, that straw that's going to break that back. And if the workload stays where it is at some point, that straw is going to break it. I don't want to see that happen, so I just want to see us move positively forward and look at this, if this is true, and move forward. Thank you very much. Any questions?
No, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Ms. Hoppa, Mr. Nichols, you have a report.
I do.
Good.
I'll return on item 15, the agreement. Second of all, I want to brag on even there were 8 new full-time faculty members this year. I just want to point out 6 of them were adjuncts, 6 of 8. First thing I want to do is thank Jeanette Gould, our Director of Communications, and Patrick Piper, the history instructor, they're not with me, but they serve with me as part of the COSAPA negotiating team. And then I want to thank Stan, Brent, and John for working with us from April till about a month ago. Stan said a convocation and negotiations I mean, people don't like each other, but they, at the end, they disagree, but then at the end, they start liking each other again. And I think that's where we ended up, and I want to appreciate all the time and effort. I know Stan had other things to do between April and now. Everyone had a lot of other things to do, but they took all the time in the world to meet with us about our concerns, listen to all the reports. So I wanted to thank them for the time and energy they put into the negotiation process.
Thank you very much.
Any questions?
I don't think so. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to general obligation bonds.
Yeah, I think this is just an announcement item, again, making sure that you know that in our two ongoing bond oversight advisory committee meetings, district areas, that our regularly scheduled meetings for the fall have been postponed until we can solicit and confirm a quorum for those meetings of the membership. So we're working to get those seats filled, and when we do, we'll bring back the set meetings for the opportunity for them to come. The good news is that the majority of the facilities funding in the two remaining bond oversight advisory committees is already accounted for. The major construction projects are finished, although there still is some prioritization to do with Measure I money that remains. And we do want to bring our Tulare Bond Oversight Committee up to date with how we have tried to reconcile some of the debt that's been established. So there's work to do, but we're in the process of trying to get the membership full so that we can establish a quorum for those meetings and be able to meet in accordance with Proposition 39 requirements.
You get people dropping out, you can't find
The terms have expired, and we're inviting and soliciting new members, but not getting the return on those new member invitations as quickly as we would like.
What's your quorum?
I think we've got 9-member committees, so we need at least 5 in each.
Do you need my help, my say, to get you submitted to those people?
We could use all the help we could get. Yeah. If the two of you would email Megan and Karen Pauls are working on inviting members,
we need the one, you know, sometimes it's a student you have to have, sometimes it's, you know.
We'll give you the exact category for persons that we need and see if you guys can generate some names, and we'll make contacts.
We can get it to you pretty quick.
Thank you. Our information items and discussion items. First, board policy administrative procedures.
Right, on item number 9, we have a quick update for you. We'd like to ask that the board consider tabling item number 9 tonight, and here's what's happened. We're bringing a couple, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, Roman numeral. I was on Roman numeral 9. Item number 1. On our board policies and administrative procedures, new and revised, we have a first reading for you here tonight of 2 APs, presentation of 2 APs. One's on high school articulation, and the other is on prerequisites and co-requisites. These happened to be some procedures that were in the middle of first and second readings in our new governance structure when we broke for summer. So the way that we've been normally taking these through our process now is they go out, a new board policy or administrative procedure will go out to the campus-wide constituents for 30 days, and we'll come back to senior management with proposed revisions. From there, whatever the proposed revisions are, then go for 2 readings to Academic Senate and to District Governance Senate, and student-related policies will go to the Student Senate. And they have another 30 days. Because those entities meet twice a month, that gives them normally a cycle of 2 meetings to have a first and second reading at those levels. And so that work had all happened, and we had brought them, with the exception of the District Governance Senate, we had them all ready to go, except needing to go to the District Governance Senate for a second reading when we came back in August. So to make a long story short, and it's probably already too late to do that, the break for summer caused us to have a little confusion over what the final wording was on a couple of these. And when they were put into the board agenda, we got notification from some of our faculty representatives in the curriculum area that they have final versions that weren't quite aligned to this. So if you will table these tonight.
Can't you just withdraw it? Because it's not an action item.
It's an information item only, correct. So what I'm saying is we're going to table presenting it to you tonight. We're going to table the presentation of it to you tonight and bring it back for a first reading with those additional revisions next time.
Do we take board action or we just?
Greg's right, you don't need to take board action.
Just do it, Lori.
Just do it, it's done. Okay, moving on to item number 2, low enrolled classes justification report, Dr. Wilson.
I have before you the low enrolled report for this fall. As you can see in the report, there, the majority of the classes that are low enrolled are either, they were short terms, a lot of them have not started yet, or they started shortly after we prepared this report, so students were still enrolling. There's also some specific classes like under industry and technology that are in Tulare campus, and it's specifically our architecture program and graphic design, and we're working, Dr. Dudo is working with the faculty there to kind of see what happened. I think part of it had to do with our transition to Tulare and some of the students being here in Visalia, so we're working on seeing exactly what happened in that area. And then some of the other ones in language arts are still enrolling, like our non-credit courses, and they can continue to enroll throughout the semester, so we're still enrolling students in those. And I think those are the main ones I wanted to point out. We did have a number of classes that in the social sciences we were trying out in Tulare that didn't fill, and so we're still trying to navigate kind of exactly what the fill rates and those kinds of things are for our offsite campuses and specifically Tulare.
Jeff, I think it would be helpful, I know we talked a little bit about this earlier on in some meeting, just if you could compare it to where we were before and maybe give reasons that way, I guess it makes this a little bit more helpful.
Okay.
In terms of, if there are, not tonight per se, but kind of always helpful to see where we were a year ago and where we are today.
Okay. Absolutely.
In the language arts, 251, I noticed you have 2 English classes that were late starts. Are they up to enrollment figure now?
Stephanie? The last numbers I had were, we checked the numbers on Thursday, and these are the last numbers that I had, were 11 and 17. So we think part of the reason for that is because what happened with those classes is we had a faculty member who went out on sick leave at the very last minute. So we had to we didn't have anyone to fill them, so we ended up having to cancel all 5 of those classes. We put 5 classes back in when we were able to hire somebody. We notified all of the students who had been dropped from the 5 classes and put them into these classes, but some of them, they didn't get the notification, and we were unable to really make the transition, but we wanted to keep those open for those students that were had been dropped from the classes. It's an unfortunate situation.
Well, this English 5251 251 is impacting the social science department drastically. And, I understand that someone getting ill and that being a problem, but something needs to be done, academic senate and so forth, because that particular requirement is not working.
Well, and we're doing a study right now, Mr. Mann, on that prerequisite issue with social sciences, and the impact that we can see thus far has not been that dramatic on the social sciences department. And what the social sciences teachers are telling us is that their students are much better prepared. But we are in the process of doing a study to get that exact data, and as soon as we have it, I will share that with you.
I won't dispute any of that, I think it's logical that you're correct, but if we're going to have a requirement, we need to make sure we offer enough that you think you will.
Absolutely.
I don't think we are.
I agree, and a part of the problem.
Unless until you can, you shouldn't have a requirement.
Okay.
Now, the board approved it, so we're the ones that are guilty, but still.
Not at all.
We make mistakes too.
Do you have any other questions on the low enrolled justification report?
Lori, I want to follow up a little bit to make sure I'm not misunderstood.
Okay.
I don't take exception to the policy, but with the policy we're mandated to offer enough of the 251. If we somehow fail to offer enough of 251, then we need to delay our implementation, in my opinion.
And if I could respond additionally, one of the challenges that we have is when we either lose an English instructor late like we did, or we're trying to add additional courses, is there is a shortage of qualified English instructors. The candidate pool is shallow. We reach far and wide, but we need to redouble those efforts and/or re-emphasize what the criteria are for us to be able to hire and place faculty. We'll see when we look at the data, we may or may not be approaching some sort of a crisis point, but we're going to have to make some course adjustment if the data continues to trend the way that it is now in terms of total numbers. Jennifer says it hasn't had that big an impact on the social studies department, but I don't know if we're going to see that be true as we continue to trend the numbers, which is why we're tracking the data this year.
I have great confidence that collectively the college will look into it, do what we need to do.
And in our English and our math are highly impacted, and science. Those are the three most impacted areas. And in fact, I have a meeting tomorrow morning with the academic deans to look at exactly those issues and what our plan should be going forward for summer and fall. We did put the majority, out of 50 classes, 10 of them are in English over the summer. And I know Stephanie added at least 10 English classes for the fall, this current fall. But it's a compacting of not having enough faculty. We had 2 faculty members go out sick, one the first week, one right before school started, and one the first week of school. And so that's down 10 classes right there. So it's been a big problem. It's been an ongoing problem in that area.
How many sections of 251 do we have?
Stephanie pulling it up right now. I think there's, I'm not even going to guess, but I think it's 40. 42. See, I was close. Off by 2. 42.
For what?
English 251.
251 that we offer this fall. And most of them are at 25. The 11, we had to cancel 3 English sections of English 251 literally the day before school started, which meant 75 students who had a class did not have a class. We were then able to go and continue outreaching, and we found a couple of new adjuncts that we interviewed on Friday afternoon, got classes added, and so unfortunately the 11 is kind of a wonky time, but we figured getting 11 students in that had not had their had the English 251 drop was better than 0, so we kind of scrambled and got them late started. Not a perfect situation.
When you say a section, are we talking about an individual 3-unit class? Is that what
It's 4 units, so 42 4-unit sections of English 251. And so the average, for a full-time faculty member, they can teach, the full load would be 4 of those sections, and for an adjunct faculty member, they can only teach 2. Because their max is 10, and so that would put them at 8 units.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much. Our annual staff report, Mr. Ratch.
I'm glad Steve had an opportunity to touch upon this, because this is one of the main reasons why an annual staffing report is before you, because we have no historical data as to where we were last year, 2 years ago, even 10 years ago. And so my goal in HR is to bring about an annual staffing report, which gives you a snapshot of where we are as far as employees go at August or September of every year. That way we can look back 5 years ago and can see where our staffing was and where we are now. I'm not going to go much into detail. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We tried to break this up into divisions so we can see how many individuals are within a particular division or department. And I also, as far as classified go, have the number of employees at the Hanford campus as well as the Tulare campus. It's here for information only, but hopefully it can be used for good reasons the next couple of years. Were any questions on it?
Did you break out from, yeah, you did, but not by total numbers on the cover page by Larry and Hanford, right?
Did not break it out by numbers.
Okay. Maybe that, you could add that next year.
Okay.
These are all full-time people.
There's no, not classified, there's approximately 20 part-time classified employees.
So to build on this report, John, what might be good is a summary sheet on top of it that breaks out numbers by category, total numbers by category. Kind of summarize each of the spreadsheets that you've got. Then we can do that on an annual and build a 3-year, 5-year trend block and start to see numbers going up and down.
Oh, these numbers are all gonna be affected by now having to go to the governance model and how people retire, right?
Depends on if in the process they're looking for additional staffing and support. There's always been a commitment to replacement, but in some of the non-academic areas that are service areas, if they're asking for additional staffing and report, it needs to come through their program review request.
Hey, Chloe, I'm gonna go back and ask, I got a question, Jennifer. Why can adjuncts only teach 2?
So the maximum that an adjunct is able to teach is 67% of a full-time faculty member's load.
Why?
So that's because otherwise they become a full-time faculty member. So
the dividing
it's,
line.
the dividing line is 67% by it's state law and thank you. State law and
I said so?
no, because someone behind me just said state law. No, yeah, because I said so. Because and it's state law that it's 67. Once you take an adjunct faculty member can go over 67% twice in every 6 semesters without having to hire them full time. But the maximum they can ever go to is 75%. So we have a policy of not going over 73%. And a full-time load is considered 15 units. So the part-time load then is 10 units for what they can teach.
Thank you, that would just seem to me to solve a problem if you could hire more adjuncts, but now I understand why you can't.
Yeah.
Or not hire more adjuncts.
Give more adjunct assignment, right?
Okay. Moving on to the next item. Financial report.
It is.
This is the fourth quarter for fiscal year 12-13. As you see here on the far right, this is still listed as projected. That's because the fourth quarter report is due prior to the 3/11 report. So it's due mid-August and we are not closed by mid-August. So these are projected numbers. We are going to be requesting that the Chancellor's Office reopen this report for us so that we can update it to where we actually ended the year. It's very similar. We will close. If you look at fund balance on line B, that is our fund balance. We ended at $2,737,411. On F1, this shows us is 6%. That's with rounding. Our actual percentage is 5.98. So we are very close to the board's mandate of 6%. So we are recovering after the budget cuts of the prior years. Some other things I wanted to touch on. The DRC backfill for 12-13 came in at $122,929. For the fiscal year 14 budget, we're projecting that their backfill needs will be $217,000. The CDC backfill for 12-13, the general fund backfill was $169,801. And the expenses for technology that remained on the Visalia bond for the year were $439,000. So we were not able to have the general fund absorb their true costs for the year. On the next page, you see at the top, it talks about our cash. So at year end, we had cash excluding borrowed funds of negative $4 million. This is still due to the state deferrals. And then our total cash, once you add in our borrowed funds, was $4.1 million at year end. Were there any questions on this report?
Any questions, board members?
What do you hear in Sacramento about contemplated changes in policy of restoring some of the holdbacks that's our money that they still have? Is it gonna just stay like it is, you guys think, or is it gonna get better?
Well, the deferrals for 12-13 were over 9 million. In 13-14, they're going down to 5 million for COS. So the governor is committed to buying back those deferrals because they are a cost to each district. We're basically providing the state with cash-free loans. So they are buying them down. I haven't heard anything for 14-15 yet. It's still very early. But he has shown a commitment to taking care of those deferrals.
You know, what was the general timeline, say from June 30 when we close to when we actually receive the monies that belong back in the previous year? Did that go through 6 months?
No, we get them very early in July. We got the majority by, say, the first or second week in July. As of right now, there's still a couple of 100,000 outstanding that they still owe us. Those are expected in October. The deferrals in the past, like for 12-13, there was intra-year deferrals also. So they were taking money from, the first 6 months of the year and not paying them until the latter 6 months of the year. But then they were also taking funds from the latter half of the year and not paying them until the beginning of this year.
Next year.
So in 13-14, there are no intra-year deferrals. We're only dealing with the ones that are crossing over the year end. And those have gone down to 5.1 million for COS.
And that's why it's a big negative cash balance.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we will move on to our consent calendar. We'll be removing items number 7 and 11.
You can take up the rest of the consent agenda absent those 2 items, and then we can take those one at a time.
I'd like to remove item 14.
Okay, so we will be removing items 7, 11, and 14. Do I have a motion to approve all other items on the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Greg, seconded by Ken. All those in favor of approving all consent calendar items minus 7, 11, and 14, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Okay, we will now take up item number 7. Do I take questions on that? Do I take explanation?
The request came from Lisa. Do you have a particular question, Lisa, on item number 7, payment of bills, and you referred to items 205 and 206?
206, just the specifics of, first of all, it looks like 2 almost same charges. I'm sure they are,
Laura,
but
I'm sorry, I just can't hear.
Yeah.
You can talk to the podium, just so John can hear. Thanks.
Right. And we'll get it on the recording.
205 and 206, clarification on exactly what those expenses were, and that it almost looks like the same expense twice. I'm sure that's not the case, but I just wanted some clarification.
Right. John, do you have, I know we don't have the itemized detailed listing, but do you have a general description of the kinds of services? We shared this with Lisa last time at the board meeting as well. For Atkinson, Andelson, Lloyd, Root, and Romo. These are legal services. They deal primarily with human resources and other issues. I think what I shared last time, and then you can add to this, John, is it does involve some costs associated with labor relations, with either negotiations preparation and or working through grievances, mediation, and or arbitration. In addition to that, though, there's a whole nother category of just personnel-related legal services, which have to do with instances where the district is involved in some sort of a legal dispute with an individual employee, a suit perhaps against the district where our liability carrier is covering half of it and consulting with legal counsel in this category because it involves policy and procedure that they've advised the board on. So those have been commingled a little bit. But these do represent 2 different payments, and sometimes the reason they look like this, Lisa, on one pay warrant for us is because their billing gets delayed. So they come to us every 30 days, John, or every 60 days?
I'm not aware of how often. It's more than every 60 days, I know that.
Yeah, okay, so they come to us every 30 days. This could represent 2 different 30-day bills, which is why they look similar over that period of time. Anything else you can think of, John, that we do with them?
No, that covers it.
But these are available for review from anybody if they want to see what they're specifically for.
Sure. The itemized service lists are available.
Well, maybe it would be helpful then if you're requesting those maybe ahead of time before the meeting, you could request them from whichever department, and we could give those to you next time.
I should point out that not all of them are.
They are here.
They're not all.
The things that might involve the confidential nature of individual employees would not be accessible.
Correct. Personnel matters would not be reviewable.
But I guess the question would be if that's what it's being spent on is your only question. You don't need, right?
And that legal service, how in fact that might differ from the new agreement that's being made with item number 11 for general attorney services.
Right. So we'll take that one up when we get to it.
And is there overlapping? It sounds like at times there might be overlapping between the two.
I can give you an explanation, Lisa.
I move that we accept item number 7 on the consent calendar.
Second.
It's been moved by Ken, seconded by John. All those in favor of approving item number 7, payment of bills, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll take up item number 11 now, the agreement for general attorney services for the district.
Okay, let me respond a little bit to this. First, let me go back and qualify one statement that Lisa made earlier. The $169,000 over the course of the last 13 months, I think that's a close, accurate number for the Atkinson Andelson firm. One note to keep in mind though as a board is 13 months ago, when you stretch that out, that covered, because of how they bill sometimes 30 days after services or in cycles of 30 days after services, that included a significant amount of costs that were still associated at the time with post-fact-finding negotiations and the actions that the board was getting consulted on in terms of how to proceed in a post-fact-finding environment and able to take action for implementation of the CAP. We're not going to see those expenses on an annual basis. So I think over the course of a year and then looking at the year prior, we'll get a better idea of what trend data looks like on these kinds of legal services. But that lump sum that Lisa is referring to did include some outstanding costs from what had transpired in 2012, moving over to 2013. This was an attempt for us to actually save money. This contract here with the local firm, Bettencourt and Rozier, is in place of what we have traditionally done, which is contracted with Tulare County Council. Tulare County Council is the public, government-funded legal counsel support service that's available to all educational districts in our area. The K-12 districts in the area can use them, the smaller K-8s and K-5 districts can use them, and the community college can use them. They work as a consortium, and the county's formula for funding is based on a per enrollment basis. So what happens in a situation like ours, and I have the benefit of also having been the superintendent of Visalia Unified, which was the largest K-12 district in the area, is regardless of the amount of service you actually use every year, because you're funded in a consortium, you're going to get your bill for their total cost of legal services broken out on a per student enrollment basis. So COS, for example, if our enrollment is 8,000 FTES or 9,000 FTES, there's going to be that 9,000 FTES divided into Tulare County's total cost, and we're going to get the bill for our share of that based on our number of students. The challenge we found when we studied this, and Doug Brinkley was actually here when this rock was uncovered, is that if you compute the total hours that we actually call county counsel for service, it was coming out to $572 an hour, because we don't use them that much. County counsel doesn't specialize in the kinds of things that community colleges need most. For example, either labor relations and or negotiations, or personnel matters, personnel related matters. The other two things that we use a lot is, I know Eric has legal counsel built into the cost of the bonds for all of our facilities issues and facility related issues. It's a specialty kind of legal counsel that gets paid for out of the bond funding. So he's covering whatever legal costs may come up for us regarding facilities within the scope of the bonds. The main thing that we would use county council for were contracted services, the kinds of things that we would go out and seek a vendor for a contracted service. Dr. Dudo uses them sometimes in services for career technical education. They get used for different kinds of services in career technical ed programs. Sometimes we have them review certain grants. And so there wasn't a big enough chunk of hours there to constitute the $40,000 a year share we would have to pay to county council based on the fact that we had large enrollment. I mean, in a nice way, and it's too bad this is going to be publicized that I say this, but the larger entities subsidize the smaller entities in the county to be able to have this collective legal service. So we gave county council a full 12 months advance notice and said that we would be seeking alternatives to that contract, and that's where we went to local Rozier and Betancourt. They don't market education as their primary service in the area because they're not trying to expand in that area. But what they've done, because they've been part of the law firms that JPAs contract with when they have risk liability claims, when a legal claim is brought against a district and a JPA has to hire a local firm, they've often hired Rozier and Betancourt. So consequently, they have a staff member who's gotten very familiar and very skilled at school law. So what they did is they responded to a request from the larger school agencies in the area and said, hey, would you guys be willing to be available on an hourly basis? So that if we needed a contract review, a service contract review, or if we did have a student discipline issue where an expulsion charge on a student in the college was being challenged and we needed to consult with you, that we could ask you to work for us on an hour-by-hour basis and just pay you for the hours billed. And they agreed to do that. So this service that you see here, Lisa, is for that hourly only basis. We believe over the course of a year, we'll review it, of course we'll study it and we'll research it. But we believe over the course of the year, it's going to be less expensive than the fixed cost we had with county council that was based on how big our college was, whether we used their services or not. So that's the reason for this. And it won't duplicate, it really won't duplicate necessarily with the other services. Because the other services, honestly, on an hourly basis, Atkinson, Andelson, Root, Lloyd, and Romo, are less expensive hourly than Rozier. Rozier's a little higher hourly, which is why we're only going to use them for the handful of things that we were using county council for before.
And just so you know, the board members asked your same questions prior to this meeting, just so you know. It wasn't.
We actually asked more questions.
Well, I can come up with some more.
So we got to hear it again.
That's why I'm so well prepared for your question.
Okay, it's been moved by Greg that we approve item 11. Seconded by John. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, we will take up item number 14 now.
Yeah, in looking it over, and for what we're providing this particular college,
Cheap rent?
yeah, very cheap rent. And so I just wanted to find out this evening and the thinking behind it.
What we tried to do, Greg, Barton College is one of those institutions that looks to partner with us to be able to promote really strong matriculation agreements for our students to go directly to a four-year college. We don't have a real template, if you will, for an MOU, and we've done these kinds of agreements with Fresno Pacific, we've done these kinds of agreements with Fresno State, we've done these kinds of agreements with other colleges. So what we started with as the basis for it this year to try to get some consistency is we went to our facility use schedule, and we said, looking at what the costs would be for just using the facilities, if you were a nonprofit organization coming in to rent our facilities for a purpose, what would your costs be? And we started with that as the basis, and then tried to build an MOU that included the opportunity for them to have the additional access they needed to classrooms that were empty to be able to offer their four-year college program. And we made sure that we did it on a limited enough basis that as we grow in enrollment in Tulare, we're not locked into any long-term agreement with these folks. It's really just the opportunity to help them on a year-by-year basis and try to provide access for our students to an articulated four-year program. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, John.
And then, I don't know, Christine, I don't know if you had a chance, or Brent, I know you helped us a little bit when you two were in transition working on this with Larry. Anything else you guys want to add to the Barton College explanation?
Well,
No,
just-
oh, go ahead.
just that they were calculated based on our current facility use rates for nonprofits. BARD came back with a reduction of hours saying, hey, let's cut the office hours here, let's cut these classes, we won't use that, and got it into the range they were looking for. Eric and myself are going to look at our facility use rates and really study. I've actually already started creating a spreadsheet, see if we need to address those, if they are reasonable or if they need to be increased. And it was based on the Fresno Pacific.
Fresno State. I think we used the Fresno State model. It's also otherwise available space during times where the center is open. So it's not as if we're displacing COS students or faculty and staff, and it's not as if we're remaining open to accommodate them. So it's a one-year kind of pilot program. We'll see.
And the agreement is just a year agreement, right? So if it doesn't work out, we can get out.
We study it at the end of the year, we renew it if we want to.
Okay, so motion to approve Item 14. Moved by Greg. Seconded by Ken. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Okay, motion passes. All right, we will begin our action items. Item number 15 on the agenda is our tentative contract agreement with CASAFA.
Well, it occurred to me during closed session that I didn't have colored copies, so I quickly made some colored copies for the board to review, and I apologize for that. For the audience, you're stuck with black and white, and I apologize for that as well. But I do have colored copies available.
Is this service or what?
I'm black and white blind. I need one.
Our master agreement with CASAFA expired June 30th of this past summer. And prior to the expiration of this master agreement, we started meeting with representatives from CASAFA. And over a period of 9 negotiation days, we were able to come up with a tentative agreement. And that tentative agreement is before you today. And I'm going to go over briefly the terms of that tentative agreement. Essentially, this is a 3-year contract that will expire in June of 2016. Going to item number 1, which is the first agreement, is that there's going to be a $1 raise on the adjunct faculty salary schedule. That includes for lecture classes, lab and activity classes, and also for office hours. And attachment, there's an attachment in the back which reflects that $1 increase in all the salaries. Also, the second agreement we reached with CASAFA is that we agreed to increase the office hour monies that were set aside for adjunct faculty members. Previously, we were at $20,000 a year. We've doubled that. Now we have $40,000 a year that's accessible for adjunct faculty members who choose to have office hours to meet with their students. That's a real big benefit to the students, and hopefully they'll be taken advantage of. Going on to agreement number 3, we've decreased the number of students in which needs to be in a class to trigger large lecture compensation for adjunct faculty members. We've reduced it to approximately 5 students. So instead of the large lecture compensation being triggered at 45 students, we've decreased it now down to 41. And so on, we've decreased it approximately 5 each way. And the chart reflects that decrease in numbers. On to agreement number 4. This is something we did not have in the contract already, but it is something that we are entitled to by law, so we did just put it in the contract, and that's employment rights may be withdrawn for any reasons permitted by the law. Agreement number 5. Although we already have an adjunct faculty room in all 3 campuses, we decided to codify it and put that there will be a workspace or a workroom available for all adjunct faculty members at the Hanford campus, Tulare campus, and the Visalia campus. Agreement number 6, 50%, every time we run a full-time faculty recruitment, at least 50% of the adjunct faculty members who apply for the position, up to 3, will be guaranteed an interview with the first level hiring committee. It can be more than 3, but we're stating that it's up to 50, up to 50%, up to 3. Agreement number 7, we crossed out language which indicated that the division or department chair would have supervisory duties. We replaced that language with area dean or designee, and that's to reflect that division chairs are not supervisory in nature, and we wanted to clear up that language within the CASAFA Master Agreement. Agreement number 8, this has to do with accreditation. We have crossed out the term objectives and replaced it with student learning outcomes. And again, this is in direct response to our recent accreditation. On to agreement number 9. Previously, we were obligated to pass out a copy of our board policy and administrative procedure of our preventing sexual harassment or unlawful discrimination to adjunct faculty members. With technology, we felt that was no longer necessary because we have all that information online, and we decided to cross out that physically handing a copy to adjunct faculty members and replace it by stating that it is available online as well as in the district catalog. Agreement number 10, if an adjunct faculty member works in 2 different locations on the same day, they will be entitled to mileage from one campus to the other. That is something new. Agreement number 11, the Chancellor's Office publishes a minimum qualifications for faculty and administrators in community colleges, which outline all the potential disciplines a faculty member can be assigned. We had that in the CASAFA Master Agreement, but it was very outdated. So with this round of negotiations, what we did is we took a look at what the Chancellor's Office mandates, and we took a look at what we had, and we combined the two and got where we needed to be as far as an update goes. Number 12, this is within the CASAFA Master Agreement evaluation language. We added the very bottom, an adjunct faculty member is evaluated on whether or not they participate in student learning outcomes, and they are marked as either satisfactory or unsatisfactory. That is new. That is in direct response to the accreditation, and now adjunct faculty members are indeed evaluated on that. If you go down to agreement number 13, this is also in response to accreditation. Adjunct faculty members have professional responsibilities. We wanted to expand those professional responsibilities by incorporating reference to student learning outcomes as well as service area outcomes. And you'll see letter G, items 1 through 6, have to deal specifically with student learning outcomes and an adjunct faculty member's responsibility to handle those 6 requirements. They will, as I mentioned earlier, be within the evaluation, but they are also something that a dean can tell his or her adjunct faculty members that your professional responsibilities include student learning outcomes, and here it is pointed out in the contract, and try to get the adjunct faculty member to participate. Again, this is a 3-year contract that expires in 2016. However, there are reopeners in the spring of 2014 and the spring of 2015, in which either side can bring forward a request to reopen salary and 1 article of their choosing. Tonight,
John, excuse me a minute. You said under those 6 items, you said try to get them to do this?
they are required by the contract now to do them. They can be required to do them.
So
or
a little
face.
more than try.
Well, what the mutual agreement there was, Greg, was to codify that when you look at a course we offer through an adjunct faculty member versus a full-time faculty member, if I'm on the student end of that and it's the same course, English 251 we were talking about earlier, there's no difference for me as a student. Same course, same material, same expectations. The difference might be in a full-time faculty member's current contract agreement, master agreement, and salary. Professional responsibilities are built in, which might include that kind of professional collegial work that you would do under student learning outcomes. The conversation we had with CASAFA at the table is that we didn't want roughly a third of our faculty to feel like, because there was absolutely no compensation for them to do this extra work, that adjunct faculty didn't have to do this kind of work for the courses that they teach as well. So therein lies the recommendation to you to increase the hourly rate by $1 an hour, because that list of new responsibilities there now justifies it. And it keeps us nicely aligned with what we're required to do through accreditation. The firm answer to your question is yes, you could use it as leverage if you needed to. The spirit that we reached at the table was that it was to be able to inform adjunct faculty members now that you're getting $1 an hour increase because these are the additional responsibilities the board is paying you for that you weren't being paid to do before. But those courses are just as important in accreditation as the one taught by full-time.
I just, the word try,
Yeah.
that confusing.
This is up for an action item tonight. I would ask the board to formally adopt the tentative agreement reached between the district and CASAFA.
Can I add a question? Office hours. How many hours can an adjunct get?
I believe it's 1 hour per week.
But it starts later, it starts later in the semester, so it's 13 weeks. They get an hour. It's a total of about $350 for the semester per adjunct faculty member.
They roughly 13 office hours.
Yeah, they start in week 5 through the rest of the semester. It ends up being 13 hours, $325.
$325. So that'll go up by $1 per hour as well now. So.
Yeah, I know how much they get per hour.
Right.
But I was just wondering how many office hours they
One
have.
hour per week.
1 per week. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Nichols, do you have any comments? Do you have a motion to approve the tentative contract with CASAFA?
Second.
Been moved by John, seconded by Ken. All those in favor of the tentative agreement signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, item number 16, College's Employees Annual Report.
I should have sat closer to make me sweat. This next topic is, the first page you have is the 2013-14 COS district objectives. And I want to refer to this page and focus on this page, but I want to run you quickly through the annual report. So the second document in this section is your annual report on, it's the annual report 2013 on the COS 2010 to 2015 strategic plan. So our original strategic plan was laid out for 5 years, and as you can see, we'll be revising that, starting the revision process for that shortly. So what we're going to provide you for the next 3 years until we get to 2015 is an annual report on where we are with the current strategic plan, and this is our first effort to do so. If you look at page 2, at the bottom of page 2 on this report, it indicates that there are 3 parts to this report. The first part is an update on all of the activities we completed from 2010 to 2013. So this first report is giving you an overview of all of the work we've done on the strategic plan for the past 3 years. And this second part of the report that begins on page 48 is an analysis of our movement toward achieving our goals. And the last part of the report that begins on page 54 is the identification of the objectives to be completed in 13-14. And when we talk about that, I'll refer back to that one sheet summary on the first page. So as you can see on page 1 and 2, these were our former objectives. And we had in our areas of focus 134 objectives. So what starts on page 4 is an update on where we are with each of those objectives. So you have what the objective was, our progress that we made, and then the status of the objective. And there are 4 areas that can be completed, eliminated, considered for inclusion in the 13-14 strategic plan, or ongoing. So the Institutional Planning and Effectiveness Committee took the lead on responding to each of these and seeing and analyzing where we were in the progress. Okay, so skipping forward to
Okay,
page,
so
yeah,
stop right
go
there.
ahead,
So
sorry.
If they're eliminated or completed, then they're going to fall off of this chart
Correct.
next year.
Correct.
Keep on.
Okay, some of them are ongoing, so they're things that are part of our daily tasks. They may not be moved to our new goals for next year, but I'll talk about that in just a second. So if it's okay, I'm gonna skip through this big section of our analysis and move to page 48. So what 48 does is gives you a summary of everything before. So it gives you a summary of all of those charts that we worked on and basically says, you know, where we were with each of the sections. And so the next few pages just summarize those previous 45 pages. Sorry, Megan. Okay, and if we can skip ahead to page 54, this is, I'm gonna go back to that cover sheet, but this talks about how we identified the objectives to be completed in 13-14. And what we did is we looked at where we were, we determined whether things have been in those 4 areas completed, ongoing, eliminated. And then we had a summit in June with senior management, Senate, the Academic Senate's Executive Board, the Institutional Planning and Effectiveness Committee, and the Institutional Program Review Committee. And at that summit, we looked at all of these 134 objectives. We were, I guess, kind of big thinkers back then in 2010. And we determined which ones we combine, which ones we could eliminate, and then which ones we should move forward as a focus for the upcoming year. Some of the ideas that we used in that process were what was some of the state focus. So for example, the states, we've shared the student success scorecard with you. So we wanted to look at what kinds of things aligned with those expectations from the state for the student success scorecard. And we also looked at the accreditation kind of requirements. And so one of the things that they've put into their annual report is institutional objectives. And we'll be talking to you about those in October. But in those institutional objectives that are required from the ACCJC, we incorporated those ideas into this as well. So what you find beginning on page 55 is our first focus area, our first objective moving on. So it comes from the focus area 2, which is student success in completing their education. The goal was creating a culture of achievement. And the new objective, as worded for 13-14, is to provide effective academic support services as measured by an increase in the rate in which students successfully complete courses. In each of these objectives, a responsible party has been assigned. There's an assessment method, a measure, the way we're going to measure it, and then if you look in the last box, it gives you the to be considered. We combine basically 1A3, 1A4, 2B10, 2B11, 3A4, and 3C6 from the 134 to create this one objective going forward. Okay.
That's really easy to understand.
Okay, yeah.
These pages.
And so from here on out, it's going to look more like just these last pages when we bring it forward instead of 134.
And I think as board members, we've been asking for a few years, and this is what we really wanted, is these 5 things right here. The rest of it, we need to make.
Which page are you referring to?
Well, just your measure. I mean,
Okay.
we need to be concerned with measure to see if we
Yes.
need to change policy, or if it's something that's budget. You know,
Right.
just our responsibility as board members,
What it
otherwise.
is. Yeah, and that's what,
involved in all of
and
this.
when we report back on these from here on out, that's what you're gonna hear is how do we assess it, how do we measure it? And it falls in with that model that we've been looking at about annual assessment. If you remember, the last box on the model is the annual report on the master plan, which is what this
It'll be
is.
all these numbers.
Yes, and we worked, one of the first assignments I worked on with our new researcher, Dr. Osterk over there, was helping us come up with these measurables and making sure that we can do them. So if we can move back to the cover sheet, I can review what the 8 objectives are that were agreed upon by those 4 entities that I spoke about. So it was great collaboration between faculty, administration, and staff working on these 8 objectives. So this is the cover sheet, the 2013-14 COS district objectives. So it was the very first document in that section. I just want to make sure you all get there. It comes before it comes right after the introduction or the overview, after the memo and before the strategic plan. So, does everybody have it? Are we good?
If you're turned horizontally, you don't. It's this first vertical sheet, right behind the cover memorandum, at the beginning of your tab.
The beginning of that section. I apologize, I went back to
Right
the
there.
beginning.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, are we good? All right, so here are the 8 objectives that we're adopting for 13-14. The first is a focus area of students' success in completing their education. And our first objective I already talked about was providing effective academic support services. And the measurement is increasing the rate in which students successfully complete courses. The second one is to increase the percentage of faculty who use the early alert system to provide feedback on student progress. And our early alert system is a way to notify students either that they're doing really well or that they're not doing well. And normally it's for you're not doing well, so the faculty are able to put in there what the issues are. And then when a counselor meets with the student, they're able to see that early alert. And it's required for several of our specialized programs like the Educational Opportunity Programs and Services and some of our Veterans and Disability Resource Center. Objective 3 is to provide a level of counseling and library services for all district students that is equitable across the sites and instructional delivery modalities. And you can see the direct tie into some of our accreditation work. District Objective 4, under Students' Mastery of Basic Skills, pilot a program of deliberate counseling in which counselors and basic skills faculty work together, and they're going to contact all first-time students who declare an intent to complete a degree, certificate, or transfer, and who also are in basic skills, English or math. And really what we're going to do there is make sure that they complete their student educational plan in their first semester, because the data shows if they have a plan and they're working with a counselor and they have a connection with the counselor, then they're more likely to complete that plan. The 5th objective is to pilot a program of deliberate counseling in which counselors and English faculty collaborate on the following. And so the counselors will visit English classes to encourage students to schedule counseling appointments. And we have data from that from our Title V grant that when the counselors go into the class, the students are more likely to go ahead, they have a connection, they have a face, to go ahead and make an appointment with that counselor and then follow up with that particular counselor. District Objective 6 is to accelerate the schedule for offering basic skills sequence in English or math. And so looking at ways that we can offer, get a student through that comes in basic skills, English or math, and getting them through the sequence faster. And so we're looking at piloting some projects on that. And then the last area, efficient, effective college practices. Objective 7 is to allocate resources based on accountable planning and budget development that links to the institutional program review and strategic plan. And you saw an example of that today through our resource allocation that connect directly to our program reviews and the strategic plan that you looked at today. And District Objective 8 is to assess the effectiveness of exactly the issue we spoke about earlier, which is the completion of English 251 as a prerequisite for the social science transfer courses. And we've already started working on that one, and I'm assuming, Dr. Ozturk, that we'll have some good results in the next few months, right? On this one, right? Okay. So he's working with Dr. Ozturk, Christian Anderson in the Social Sciences Division to come up with a study on that, and we'll be getting that data back to you as soon as we can. So those are the 8 district objectives, and I believe this is on for a vote to approve.
Can I ask a question first?
You may.
You know, it all sounds wonderful if you get enough faculty and staff to be able to do it. My concern would be, do you have enough counselors to do it?
That's going to be part of the process that we go through as we move ahead and see how it, and in some cases it's going to be, I think, redistributing counselor time. So when you have, if a counselor is meeting 30 minute appointments with a student versus going and spending 30 minutes in a class and reaching 25 students, I think that's a good use of their time. And then they're able to make that connection there with the students, answer questions, and then those students that have their questions answered there, it avoids a 30-minute appointment, but it also encourages those that need more time to come in and see a counselor, which is one of the issues that we have, is that the students not going in to see the
That's one of
counselor.
the complaints I hear from students and parents is that can't get to a counselor.
And
Can't get to a
I was going to say that's true the first few weeks of the semester, but you have a time in the mid part of the semester that isn't the case, and the time when students don't necessarily need a counselor at that point, and that's the time when counselors can be doing the outreach. First few weeks of the semester, it's definitely impacted, or right before the semester.
And I was gonna add, Greg, that if all we do is the model where the counselors open up their schedules and receive appointments from students and fill up as many 30-minute slots as they can to try to see students and counsel them, then the answer to your question would be no, we don't have enough counselors and we'll never have enough counselors. So what these are alternative strategies to that traditional model. As Jennifer mentioned, when we use the term in here deliberate, it means making a decision to trade off an hour of time that I might have seen 2 students for an hour of time that I might be able to see 50 students. And from that impact, expand what I'm going to be able, the information I'm going to be able to get to students. And then because they've seen me and met me in their classroom, they're going to be more apt to call and schedule individual appointments with me as they need it. So we're trying to maximize the few resources we have by using different strategies.
Well, I would think their educational plan, half that can be completed as a class, obviously, and then the fine tuning occurs. But that's true. You don't need to go through half of it, which is pretty ordinary stuff with each of them individually.
And just to verify, there were counselors in the group that put this together. There were several.
Well, I'm sure that they agree that there's half of that, those plans, or whatever percentage it is, that all students can make.
Yeah, and that's the format we use in some of the specialized courses, like our human development courses, as well as our first year experience program, where they do those in the group setting. And so a lot of that work is done, that's our model that we're following, is how it's done in those settings.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Okay, so we have to vote on this one, am I correct? Sorry. Okay, do I have a vote to approve the College of Sequoia's annual report on the strategic plan?
I move we approve the strategic plan.
Moved by Greg. A second? Second.
I'll second.
Seconded by Ken. Everybody awake?
Does our student trustee know she can make motions in seconds?
She has the opportunity, we're doing a little bit of training with her. We still need to do some training with her. She has the opportunity to cast what's called an advisory vote. So on items specific to student-related issues, we can, as board president, call on our student board representative to cast her vote first. And that has the potential to impact all of you because you know what she's thinking.
Yeah, but she should, I think she has the right to make definitely seconds on these type of motions too. I think that's the policy.
It may be that she can make a second, yes.
Okay, moved by Greg, seconded by Ken. I already forgot. All those in favor of approving our strategic plan signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. On to item 17. Thank you, Jennifer. Our annual appropriation limit. Staff.
Okay, oh, I think that was supposed to be a roll call vote, is that right? Kim just said that?
Doesn't say it on here.
It's not a resolution.
Okay, never mind.
Okay, we can go back and do it again.
Okay, no.
Oh, we listed it, that might have, oh no, coming up, the appropriation limit says roll call vote.
Okay,
Sorry, but it doesn't say
Resolution, exactly.
it's a resolution. So usually it says it on here though, so I need to catch that.
Okay,
Usually
no.
we write roll call on here on the agenda too.
Got it, okay.
And it would be nice if she actually come up with what money she's gonna tell us.
Okay.
Our next item is actually the annual appropriation limit, also known as the GAN limit. It's probably fairly routine for you folks. Every year we have to come and get board approval of the resolution for our GAN limit. And this is the Paul GAN Act legislation in 1979, I think was Prop A. It just limits government spending growth to no faster than the growth in the population and inflation. Basically, it's a calculation of the state level, but we as a community college also have our own GAN limit, and we just have to verify that we have not exceeded it in our calculations. We are actually well below the calculation for 13-14 is a little over 86 million, and the amount that our calculation comes out to is 42.3 million. And I believe that the state hasn't even been close to meeting their limit because of all the reductions in the prior years. So this is here for your approval, and are there any questions?
I move that we adopt resolution 2013-17.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. New, seconded by Mr. Mann. Hold on, Megan.
Trustee Smith?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Passes roll call vote. We're on to item number 18, our district budget.
Okay, I'm going to try our remote here. Tonight, we have our final budget for board approval, and this comes on the heels of the preliminary budget that was approved in June. Basically, we then get the final determinations from the state, or final as we know them, for our budget, and we finalize the differences. You probably saw the cover memo for this agenda item, which basically summarizes the revenues and expenses and the differences therein. There's also the budget book, which is pretty extensive. Lots of good information in there, but what I have for you tonight is a PowerPoint that attempts to summarize the budget book. So we'll move forward and let you know some of the changes that we have here. First of all, the main one, and it's also on page 7 in your budget book, is the 1.63% access and 1.57% COLA. And those are the final increases that we landed on really for our unrestricted general fund budget. It's a $1.3 million increase to COS. This is the only one that to me has a little interest to you all. The state final budget came out with a 2.1% access, but there's a lot of complexity behind the finality of that. It's not certain yet, and on page 7 you'll see that we went with the more conservative 1.63%. Leangela Miller-Hernandez and Linda McCauley, who I really need to thank for preparation of a lot of these documents. Leangela gave me a pretty extensive explanation of why there's still uncertainty there. And I was trying to understand it my first week here, and then I went and heard the Chancellor speak, Bryce Harrison, I think I got that name right, and Harris, and he had the same concern. So I thought, okay, good, we landed on a conservative place. It's only a $240,000 difference. If it should go up, the 2.1% is a maximum. We've budgeted that $240,000 less. And we will let you know, many of these numbers, I'm learning how the community college district works, but many of these numbers are not finalized till, many will be finalized at the P1 population, but some are not finalized until the following year. So I'm learning how this all works, and you'll see a small adjustment for a prior year when it was finally calculated. Then we have some restricted funds that are still a little bit in limbo. So I tried to give my best calculations and estimates, and Leangela listed the statewide amounts. Prop 39, you're familiar with the energy efficiency proposition that went before voters last November, 47 million statewide. We're thinking maybe 400,000 for COS.
I was in Sacramento late last week, and they gave out the final numbers of 303.
303, darn. Okay, that's lower. But it's not a lot of money, but at least we have our final numbers, and we'll be able to move forward with these implementations of some energy efficiency projects in the next year. Eric will probably be giving us more information real soon on that as they decide how we need to spend it. Deferred maintenance and instructional equipment. We actually got funding from the state this year. I understand we haven't gotten it in the last few years. That's $109,000 for each section. So we're going to be spending that both on deferred maintenance projects, and you'll see that in the week ahead as part of what we're using for our base funding for the instructional equipment side.
Christine, does that mean we get 218,000, as you say?
We do. We get 218. We also have to match it from the district. So we're just using, for instance, fund balance in our capital outlay fund, I believe, to match the deferred maintenance. And the instructional equipment side, there's another match. So, but we do get 218. Student success, which was the old matriculation previously referred to, similar to CalWORKS, the DRC, and the EOPS, we're waiting for some calculations. We know state numbers, but we really don't know what that is for us. So you won't see those in our budget book or in our final budget yet. I don't know when that's going to come. I'm learning the process. But smaller amounts for CalWORKS and the DRC. Perhaps if we do get those dollars, they can help us with what you heard earlier about the DRC backfill. which is $217,000 for the current year. So the student success is probably the one we're really waiting on, and that will be categorical. And I had just guessed at $400,000 there likewise. Online education, it's a small amount at the state level, but we're waiting for further information on that. And then Prop 30 is $30 million. Part of that is going to assist with bringing our deferrals down. We heard from over $9 million to $5.1 million for 13-14. One of the things on your cover memo was the increase in revenues. There's other income in there. That was one of the ones that caught my eye, but it's not here in the PowerPoint, but I just wanted to mention that was a Department of Labor grant, which is, I think, 15 community colleges, a consortium that we actually have worked in the past with this same grant. We just got the dollars early enough to actually budget them by our final budget. $300,000 for a deputy sector navigator grant, which Luann down at Tulare is overseeing, and that is new. There was also a loss of a CTE enrollment grant. So that was one of the items that is different from what we adopted in June. Moving forward, it's hard to read up there, but hopefully you have a copy in front of you. This is what I have come to know as the fiscal solvency plan methodology of looking at our budget. And what I have on this page, and then I added it on the next slide, one with perhaps a possible COLA in the next 2 years. But this page ties to what you'll see in the budget book, and it looks at what if there are no new revenues coming to us. Where are we going to end 2 years out? It's good to adopt a budget for our current year, but it's good to also look at the upcoming years and do a little bit of a multi-year projection. So I don't think I have a pointer here, but the first column is our 12-13 actuals, and just revenue ended at $45.7 million, expenditures at 46, almost $0.2 million. So we did have almost a $500,000 structural deficit. Most of that was made up with one-time funds. We ended up with a $53,000 fiscal year deficit after the one-time funds were brought in. 13-14, we're projecting almost $48 million in revenues, $48.2 million in expenditures, and we have a $270,000 deficit that's under the 13-14 column. And we're going to use one-time budget funds to make up that deficit. In 14-15 and 15-16, if there were no new revenues, what we have here is revenues are held flat, but we've increased our expenditures for what we know will occur. The expenditures likewise have not increased for what may be an increase in our health premium cap, or what may be an increase in salaries if one was given. So everything's held fairly flat here, but you can see, unfortunately, we decline pretty quickly. I now have a pointer. We'll see if this works. So in 15-16, what the changes in expenditures are annual increases to the budget of $660. That's primarily step and column. A couple other things like utilities, and we designate those on the next page. And then $557,000 comes out. That was part of a calculation of increased costs as we increase summer school offerings and class offerings, trying to get to our mid-sized college in the current year. Thus, those would come out the next year. And then there was a Tulare provost position, which might be 150 or 160 total, 160,000, but we have 40,000 in the budget currently with our retiree covering that position, but knowing that eventually we'll have to hire for that. So those are the changes to expenditures, and you come down to a structural deficit of about $500,000, and again, that would be with no new revenue. I'm going in the wrong direction simply because we have other ongoing costs that do increase. The next year, 15-16, 47.9, almost 48 million in revenues, again, same number, and expenditures are now 49.1 million. And that just simply accounts for the step and column cost increase and a few other small ones. But we're then looking at a almost $2 million deficit. And unfortunately, if that worst case scenario occurred, we would have used up most of our one-time funding. So we would definitely be dipping into fund balance at that point. I do want to take us to the next slide and explain. a little
Christine, let me just ask
Yes.
one question before you move on.
Uh-huh.
Are we referring to when we say like the one-time funding to cover the shortfall through these example? Is that one-time funding for the most part funds left over from Measure I that are used to pay for technology or am I thinking of something different?
In this case, I don't believe they are. I think they are comprised of two components. One was some law, medical, administrative activity funding that we have received that's set aside. The other is, and I'm learning about this, but indirect cost rate, which prior to the last couple of years, we used to set aside in an account, and we kind of protect it by putting it in a deferred revenue account. And it's basically funding that is available, that is not sitting in fund balance. Those are the two amounts that I'm aware of, and not Measure I, because we have been, as we've been able to utilize some Measure I funds the last few years. Yeah. So I did some. What did I do to make that?
Yeah, this is
Yeah, this assumes a 2% COLA. 2% is a very conservative amount. The state has put out a few projections of Prop 98 increases. Next year, actually, 14-15 could look very good. It could be 5% or above. But as you may know, what the state's done when they've had good COLAs the last couple of years is they've used maybe half of it just to pay down deferrals. I mean, they are not getting that all passed through ongoing revenues. So 2% I think is a fairly conservative estimate. No one knows what's going to happen more than a couple of years out. But with the state inching forward, inching up, we think that might be fairly reasonable. And so it begins to look better for us. And it actually looks better to the point of we may be better than break even and have a little money to do something with. So looking at this, just simply looking at 14-15, the first two, 12-13, 13-14 haven't changed. 14-15 though, you end up with some increased revenue, 47.9 million, whoops, I'm on the wrong page, 48.8 million, so smaller revenue, and 48.4 million of expenditures, similar to the increases you saw before. But in this case, you would end with a little over 400,000 of a net income. 15-16, moving out there, 49.7 million could be the revenue if we were to receive those extras. And you would come down to a 49.25 million in expenditures, which is almost 500,000 of a net income or a net revenue. And something to remember is I'm not assuming any increases to a cap or to salaries in these scenarios. So it's still fairly flat in what we're assuming in expenditures. It's just projecting out what we know, what we have right now, contractually as well. And then it lets us know where those numbers may fall.
Yeah, so you're saying no salary adjustments or anything except cost.
Exactly.
And then also not adding a whole lot more students either, right? We're keeping our actual
Yep.
fee
Yes,
about the same.
yes,
So we're
that's
trying to
another
play it as
assumption.
conservative as we can, and even though we're making some estimates for what increased cost of living adjustment might be, we're taking a really conservative approach there. But we've shown you what it looks like if we get zero, and we know we're more than likely not going to get zero. But we didn't want to be too flowery either. So by showing you a modest 2% increase, you get an idea as we track the state's COLA adjustments of how good we could look if the COLA comes out better than 2.
And in my conversations with Leangela, I believe, and I might be able to answer this, that this already assumes that we did reach mid-size college for this year for all our campuses, and thus a $1.1 million increase there.
Right.
So moving on, I'll try not to spend too long on all these pages, but this is how we came at the annual increases. 12, 13, and 13, 14 are pretty much a done deal, and 14, 15, our step and column costs are almost 536,000. Health and welfare, I put question marks because we're just not making any assumptions, so no changes were input there, but we don't know what we'll be doing there with costs, whether we will be increasing what the district pays. PERS and STRS are left as they were, the same cost is carried forward. But you might be familiar that with PERS coming out with some proposed increases to the employer contributions that could be fairly significant, especially as you get out a year or two. STRS is supposed to be coming out with proposals. None of this I don't think has been adopted yet. But STRS is even in a worse position than PERS, so it'll be interesting over the next year, really, to see what happens there. The other costs, just some utilities, some insurance increases, and then I believe there was a plan for custodial care at Tulare for 14-15, and those are the numbers you saw in the above pages for increased costs. Okay. Now this, I'll just be kind of brief, but it lets you know where our fund balances will end up the next few years for 3 of our funds, the OPEB fund, the Visalia bond, and then of course the district. The OPEB, this is just kind of to show you that we're at 5.26 million, and we're assuming we're going to stay there. There will probably be some interest added to that, but it goes out quite a few years here. Visalia bond, currently we have over 3 million in the bond fund. We are using some deficit allocation there for 12-13 as we close the books, which basically we're doing right now, ending at 2.631 million. This assumes that we're going to spend most of that in this next fiscal year, and I'll share with you right now, because we have the 3-year spend down requirement, and because the last issuance was issued in 2011, we are looking at getting the majority, or 85% of that, spent down by March 2014. So you'll see some activity in the next couple months, and it may or may not be facilities. We've discussed a number of options with you. One of the items that was allowed for in the bond was COPS repayment, so that's one of a few different options. COPS,
COPs,
certificates of
the
participation.
certificates of participation, you
Yes.
can pay those down.
Yeah. So anyway, so you'll see that we're going to have to spend it down, and this just gets it down kind of to the required levels, and then fully expended. Anything below 750,000 meets the requirement of the law. That only leaves 15%. You have to have an intention.
Child Development Center?
What's that, could we use it? I believe we could, because it's the way the bond language reads, it does read for facilities on this Visalia campus. So.
Athletic department, no. No, I'm talking about the building.
Talking about fixing the building.
So, and then I'll move over to the district, and you saw most of these numbers on the prior page, but you saw the $53,000 deficit from 12-13, the $270,000 deficit that we're projecting for 13-14, and then again, at that worst case, if there's no COLA, almost $500,000 of 14-15, and almost $1.2 million deficit for 15-16. And it puts you in a little bit of a precarious position, just so you as the board are aware, as we would begin 16-17. We would actually only have 2.25 million. That would be below even the 5% required by the state. So we're not planning on getting there. But if we did have the 2% COLA, this shows, and no other increased expenditures per se, we would be well above the 6% that the board has designated as a required amount. 6% I think is about 2.75 million, and this would bring us to 3.362 million. So that's a little recap of the effect of our fiscal solvency plan. The FTES update, it might be interesting to see our historical perspective of our actual FTESs and are funded by the state. Where it gets really interesting is to see that we were well above the 10,000 for 3 years. We dropped rather rapidly in 12 and again in 12-13. And the funded, in 12-13, we were actually just a little bit above the funded, but you'll see the funded dropped as well. This year, we're anticipating, and these are ballparks, but we're close, of 85, 66 in funded. And we are saying that 93, 87 is where we're going to have to hit to make our mid-sized college. That's a little bit of a moving target. There's play in there, and it has, Brent can probably speak better than I could. It has to do with extra funds that are unspent and what colleges don't use, and so they take it back out and reallocate it. But we think that's a pretty safe projection, so that's what we're shooting for as we meet and monitor our enrollment. And discussing or talking about FTESs, you are familiar that we have the base funding level for 12-13 of 8408. That figure was up from the prior year. This year, 13-14, our target is that 8566 for funding. And basically the understanding that Hanford funnels to Tulare currently so that we can achieve what we need to continue the 1.1 million for Tulare to be a center. And then Hanford is shooting toward becoming a center. And when that is achieved, they also will receive, or we will receive as a district, an additional 1.1 million. And I don't think we're looking at that happening in this next year, but I think it's a plan for possibly the following year out. So basically, FDES can come from both centers and combine with Visalia, so that together we're trying to reach the mid-sized college, and that is that 1.1 million. If we reach it, will be on top of the 3.3 in the base allocation already there, which is called a small district, a small campus designate. That confused me a little bit at first, but now I understand. So planning for this mid-sized college, the district has been below the mid-sized college threshold, which was 10,000, and right now it's 9387 as our estimate. We're trying to get it here, meet our 9387 threshold in 13-14, so that we can get that funding for the next 3 years. It is a very crucial year. In order to reach it, we have to increase from 8646, which was last year, to 9387 in the current year. This plan I took from what I think had been presented in June to you folks, and I massaged it a little bit, but there's probably more information we'll have to keep you updated with, because summer was estimated at 250. We actually came in at 268. I'm sorry I didn't update that. And summer 214, we estimated at 250 FTESs. I'll let you know, but we're looking probably at 500 or higher in order to make up for what appears to be not quite the movement in the fall, this fall 2013 that we hoped for. We had hoped for an additional 200 FTESs this fall. And right now, actually where we are is we're not even meeting last fall's FTESs. We're a little behind, and we're still adding late start classes. But where this puts us is there will be a real strong push for spring. And everyone's telling me, again, I'm learning a lot about the district, but that there's a lot we can do in summer if we gear up and offer the classes, that there's a lot of interest from students. So this plan, some version of it was going to cost the district 1.1 million. At this point, I'm thinking it will cost us a little more for next summer as we gear up. So this is just a summary of the tentative budget versus the adopted and the changes that you see therein. The expenditures are, a lot of the increases are due to these categorical grants that we added in other income. If you want to see specifics, especially for supplies and services, which are a couple of the larger increases, they're on pages 9, 11, and 12 of the budget book, and you can kind of read. They have letters to the side of them, and then we'll go on to the next page and explain them. For instance, that last one, the 99,000 down in other, was simply the removal of the DRC director that we had before, the Disability Resource Center. The 271 and the 192 was almost strictly categorical program expenditures that were added. The other includes some Tulare utilities and also the American Health Care Act fee, which had been budgeted but now has been removed, and there's a little movement there. The certificated salaries, primarily 156,000 of that was CTE grants and Dean of Student Services that went up there. So little movement both directions. The next 2 pages, I probably won't go into a lot of detail, but it gives you the summary of all of our other funds, or most of our other funds, and all of them that are with Tulare County Treasury. And some of these small activities, you'll just see interest income being booked. Some of the larger things are either bond funds, or down here where you see almost 1.6 million coming in. There's a lot of state revenue actually still coming in for Tulare construction. And this last one also has some bond fund local revenue. When we're talking debt service, any of these that you see debt service, that's the taxes coming in to pay the debt. The next page, interest income, some expenditure of fund balance, and then for the Visalia GO debt service, that's just taxes coming in to then pay the bond. And those are primarily handled through our county tax collector. And the last page, similar, most of them I'm thinking are taxes coming in, and then there are a couple fund balance amounts where we're taking the money out of fund balance and expending it on some of our activity.
So I hope that wasn't too long.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
On Tulare Bond, is that number a little lower? It's not the 12 million anymore, is it? Or is
Which one are you looking at? Sorry.
The Tulare Bond anticipation notes?
Oh, the bond anticipation
Are
notes.
we-
Yes, yes. This was as of adoption, really, July 1st. This now is about 8.5 million because we actually paid it off. And I
Get a little
think,
nervous.
I think,
No, bands are more like 5.5.
oh, you're right. And then there was additional
We
bond
issued,
issuance. So
we
there's
issued
bond
3 more
anticipation
GO
notes,
bonds plus the 4 million of
5.5.
internal.
I'm on page, and it's in the budget book too, but it's
It's-
on the one that says other funds continue.
It says
Second
page
to the last
13
page.
if you can see it.
Oh, yeah, 13.
Yeah, and it's right up there with the bond anticipation notes, and I think if I had just been coming just as those were being paid off, I might have reworked this to make sure that before this book went to print, we had the new numbers in, but this was kind of going to print right about a few days after we paid off the prior bonds.
Okay, so I mean, it doesn't matter, it's in here, you know, it'll get corrected next year, is that correct? Okay, because I noticed it was in here, okay.
So any questions, comments, or direction for the future?
Any questions, board members? I think everybody's getting tired.
It's a long week.
It is a long week. So much for the school. Important though, it's all important stuff. Okay, do I have a motion to accept our 2013-14 district budget?
So moved.
Moved by Earl, seconded by Greg. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much, Christine. Item number 19, workers' compensation coverage for volunteer personnel. That's Christine. Another one.
I got comfortable. Okay, this one is, I believe that perhaps the way this was worded, I'm thinking that it's an annual item, but I'm not positive. This came from Tulare County Schools Insurance Group, and they're our JPA that covers our workers' compensation system. Basically what it's saying is it's asking us to renew, so I was assuming we've done it before, but I'm not 100% sure. All the schools in this Joint Powers Authority make a designation that their volunteers will be recognized similar to employees, so that if there is an issue, they would not sue the district under property and liability or under a liability claim, but that it would be worked into a workers' compensation claim. And they said that this has to be approved in advance in order for that to occur. It's a little more financially sound for us to process claims like this under workers' compensation than it would be under a lawsuit against a liability insurance.
I move that we approve resolution 2013.
Second.
Moved by Don, seconded by Ken. Maybe please poll the board.
Trustee Brumbaugh.
Aye.
Trustee Nugent.
Aye.
Trustee Mann.
Aye.
Trustee Sherman.
Aye.
Trustee Rizzo.
Aye, thank you. Motion passes, please. Roll call vote. Last item. My voice is maybe getting lost, but we got a few more minutes. Dr. Lacerna, curriculum, new modified and deleted.
Shortest curriculum report ever. 4 classes, 1 deletion, 2 modifications.
How many questions can we ask?
And a new skills certificate. And I promise the next one will be much longer. We were away for the summer, so we're just getting back in the swing. Any questions?
You have a motion to approve?
I move we approve. Second.
Moved by Greg, seconded by Earl. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, voice vote.
Lori?
Anything further?
Yeah.
I can't tap the gavel yet.
Ms. Greer already left, so we'll tell her this what I'm saying. Is, she asked, I think, asked us to consider a couple items on it, then so we can, so the board would then either not schedule something in the future or schedule something in the future. And I just wanted to share with you that I, for one, for the board to take a pass on AB 955 and also take a pass on the Senate issue the accreditation, just not pursued.
Yes, and that's why I didn't bring it for discussion amongst us board members, because I don't like when we're put on the spot like that. I think it's unfair to us to have to respond to those types of
Typically,
questions.
you talk about it. Well, would you, well.
You couldn't vote on it.
No, well, our option though is to ask Dan to put it on a future board meeting, and I'm suggesting I'm not interested in putting it on a board meeting. Right. Now, I just didn't want it.
Yep, I agree with that as well. Do we have any board members that want to take different issue?
I would agree with that.
Okay, anything further? Mr. Caradosa, we're going to reconvene to closed session. Good night, everybody. Thank you.